Okay, so we've had a bit of a hiatus with springtime being here, a bit of the quote unquote off season, and then all of us taking our little mini vacations, but we're all back together. I'm with Chris Griffin of the Horns Down podcast, JP, aka Indy Sooner. Guys, let them know where they can find y'all at.
Hey guys, you can find me at Chris with a K on Twitter. You can find my guy Seth Oliveris at Seth Oliveris. If you want to find our podcast, you can find us at the Horns Down Podcast. It's on everything: Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all of that stuff. We got a YouTube channel going up now. We're doing live shows here and there. So definitely check us out, guys. We got a lot of content we're bumping out.
Sure, you can find me on Twitter, the underscore Sooner, as you see below. Then the homie Trav that does the JP and Trav show with me, you can find him at Travis underscore Skull on Twitter as well. And then you can find our podcast. It's on YouTube. Go to my channel, Indy Sooner, and you'll be able to watch any JP and Trav show that we've uploaded, and we live stream Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Central Time. So just make sure you look out for that link or just subscribe so you can be ready to roll on those Wednesday nights.
Yeah, always fun to do that. We need to get Seth on here. We've been talking about that forever. We need to make that happen. We need to make that happen for sure. I need to talk to him again. Seth's a great guy. But with all that being said, we got a lot to unpack here, right? And we got a few different directions we can go with this, right? But I think we need to start with spring practices coming back into the fold, spring games coming up. And we can start, since both of y'all are Oklahoma fans, with the Oklahoma Sooners and y'all's spring practices. Talk to me about what y'all are hearing out of Norman right now. One of the things I'm super interested in, we talked about this on JP's show on Wednesday, but I'm interested in hearing from y'all some names you want to watch going into spring, who you think is worth watching, and then we're going to get into some other topics, but I'd like to start there.
JP, I'll go ahead and say it seems like Daniel Parker is making a lot of noise. A lot of people are really big on him. He's tight end transfer from Missouri. Obviously, Dylan Gabriel. You're hearing a lot of really good things about him. You're still hearing that, hey, there's still room for improvement. There's still things that he needs to work on, which actually to me is encouraging because now it gives us a realistic perspective, just saying that, hey, look, he has a knowledge base, a solid knowledge base, a solid foundation for what Levy is trying to do. But at the same time, we still got to remember and put it in perspective that they're trying to get a whole team or a whole offensive unit acclimated to this system. So it's going to be some give and take there. Another name, JP, who else are you hearing on the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah, on the offensive side of the ball, I'm hearing Eric Gray a lot. Heard that he's looked good, and there's been some weird speculation, as far as I understand, from the Tennessee board that he's looking at trying to go back there, but I haven't heard anything about that. It just seems like hearsay at this point, which is weird. But Eric Gray's one that name I've heard. Obviously, Dylan Gabriel, Brent Venables has talked about him twice now in press conferences and just talked about the leader he's been and just how sharp he's looked and how focused he is and ready to go. So those are kind of two names that I'm hearing on the offense side of the ball. Defensively, and then I'll pass that over again to you, Chris. And I've had this feeling since last year. It has just kind of been reinforced by what's coming out of practices and specifically what defensive ends coach Miguel Chavez has been saying. But Ethan Downs is one that I'm looking to see break out this year. And I mean, he just has all the tools to be great on and off the field. He's an Oklahoma boy through and through. He cares about the university, wears it on his chest. It's what Miguel was talking about in his press conference today. He's the type to pick up after other people, pick up trash. He's just one of those old school, blue collar, hard working defensive ends, and he's got blessed athleticism as well at the same time. So.
Now, let's jump back to the offensive side of the ball. I can't forget Braden Willis as well. It seems like from, looking at what Eichert and Lehman are saying and just hearing just through the wire, it seems like the tight ends are going to play a big part in Levy's offense, and that is a big part of it. As far as he loves to live in that 11-man, 12-man. You know what I'm saying? So I'm excited to see what Braden Willis can do. I don't know if he's going to break off and be that the guy that we think Caden Helms could possibly be. I know they're excited about him, but mostly hearing about excuse me, about the like the tight ends or whatnot, at least from my part. I would say from defensively, I won't say there's necessarily a name that I've really heard about, more as just the coaches are really impressed with the talent on that side of the ball. And I mean, that's kind of something that I guess you could attribute to just to what the prior defensive coaching staff left and what they were trying to build with their whole regime. But at the same time, I think the coaches have been pretty impressed with what was left, but at the same time, they're still looking for some of those guys to emerge. They're looking for captains, looking for leaders, you know. I mean, you're looking at guys like obviously Jalen Redmond, you know, that's one thing I would say going into this spring game. I said it on our podcast on Monday, last week, but last year it was kind of who I'm excited to see. I think this year it's what I'm excited to see, because with this coaching staff, you have a lot of guys who, I'm not going to say the last coaching staff didn't love the game, but I would say with this coaching staff, they've came in and they made it clear that, hey, technique, basics, fundamentals, different things like that, that's what's going to be preached around here. And so when you hear that, you're saying, okay, so I'm going to the spring game, not necessarily thinking, okay, I want to see what Eric Gray looks like because last year he didn't have the year that we all thought he would. No, you're going there saying, okay, I want to see what kind of principles are being taught. What are our DBs doing? What are our DBs going to be doing? Like, what's the approach now? Is the approach to be playing 15 yards off against Kansas, or is the approach to kill everything in sight? So I think it's one of those things for me that I'm most excited to see.
Yeah, one of the things that I want to talk about, both of y'all said Eric Gray, and I think it's no secret when he was coming out of Tennessee, like I was a proponent at the time. I said Texas needed to go get him. I said y'all needed to go get him. I listed teams right through and through. I was like, hey, someone needs to go get this kid. He's very, very talented. I've been surprised how much pushback I've received when I say I think he's going to have a big year this year. A lot of fans are down on him. And the only thing I'd say there is the running back production as a whole was down for OU last year. And that was just a depth issue. That was a usage issue. And running back is such a talent-dependent position that if you don't have the talent around you, you're going to struggle and you're setting yourself up for failure. Now, in OU's case, the talent wasn't the problem, right? Mm-hmm. Talent was there, but it was how they were being used that was the ultimate problem. I mean, Eric Gray this year, I think we could easily see way more involvement in the offense as far as a versatility standpoint in the receiving game. I did a video not long ago talking about how statistically Lincoln Riley has given more carries to one running back than Jeff Lebby has, but Jeff Lebby is exponentially better at spreading the ball around than Lincoln Riley was. We talked about this on your show on Wednesday, JP, about how when you looked at Lebby's system, there were multiple guys that were within like 10 carries of each other. And I mean, they were spreading the bulk. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you looked at last year, the spread of carries, it was way astronomical for one individual as opposed to the other. The other thing I want to get to, Ethan Downs. That's a name that I'm keyed in on as well, right? Dude is very, very talented. I actually did a video talking about sophomores, and he was my honorable mention. And when I said that, I was like, okay, well, I picked 3 guys out. If any of you present me with Ethan Downs instead of one of the 3 I picked, you'll hear no argument from me. So that's a name I'm very excited both of you brought up. I think y'all know me being from Denton. I'm very excited to see what Billy Bowman does this year, whether that be on offense or defense.
Defense.
Yeah, I think so. I'm very biased there. We've talked about this, but want to go through here. Gold and Blue Dude says, West Virginia fan here, YouTube sports channel looking to collaborate with other Big 12 YouTube channel shows. Man, if you go to my description on my channel, hit me up on Twitter, Golden Blue Dude. I'll get you on here anytime. I love talking football. So whenever you want to come on. I'll get you introduced to some content creators and we can do some stuff. But thank you for being here this evening. Brandon, the Texas fan of the group, says it's 5:53 and OU sucks. Hook 'em. Thank you for the $5 this evening, though, Brandon. But you already know you're going to get pushback with the 2 I have in front of me. And
I'm not worried about that. That's just free money. That's just free money for me.
Golden Blue Dude says West Virginia going to whoop Texas, and then OU will probably whoop ours. Hey,
that's okay, true. Man. I'm fine with it. Hey, no, so, just to jump back in, Ty. Oh, go ahead.
Well, this is a name I want to talk about as well. So do your talking point as well. But Jaleel Farouk was the name I picked on offense.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, my three were Stutzman, Farouk, and then Billy Bowman. Those were my three names.
So I was going to say, as far as Bowman, I mean, JP, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like I'm excited about the safeties this year. With Keith Lawrence and Billy Bowman, I'm like, hey, there's endless possibilities there. And I think that we will see a better Billy Bowman. When he was playing the nickel last year, he looked really good. He looked pretty dead.
That's a tough position too.
Yeah, that's a tough position. He looked better there than he did at corner. Now, when they switched him to corner, obviously it was kind of suspect, but at the same time, I don't think he's ever really played corner like that. I think it's always been either safety or just whatever utility position they needed him for on his high school team. But I would say I'm definitely excited to see him. Ethan Downs, that's a name that a lot of people are excited about, and I'm excited about the kid as well. But I will say this right here, and I will keep saying it. I'm going to give you one player that I think we'll all agree on. It could or should take that next step, and I'll give you one player that's a hot take as well, okay? So I believe that Reggie Grimes will take that next step. And then my hot take is I think Marcus Stripling is a name to look out for, because I think that if we can have a consistent Marcus Stripling making plays in the Oregon game, that Marcus Stripling makes plays, and Marcus Stripling does make plays from time to time. So I'll be interested to hear what JP and Ty, what you guys have to say about that. But that's my hot take. I think Ethan Downs, I'm not going to play it off. Obviously, I think the kid's he's going to be great. Blue collar worker, all the rest of that. But those are the two names that I would look out for.
Yeah. No, bro, I completely understand that. I completely agree, honestly, with the Reggie Grimes take. And I think Marcus Stripling, too, like you said, somebody that came on at the end of last year and for all intents and purposes, from what we've heard, seems to be doing well in spring practice. I wanted to go back real quick to Jaleel Farouk. I mean, that's a cat who, he didn't really play last year at all, very sparingly. But then, you kind of look at him in the Alamo Bowl, and you're like, who is that? Like, just the way, the physicality he was playing with. Like, it reminded you, the physicality at least, of a CeeDee Lamb, and honestly, an older CeeDee Lamb, not a true freshman. Like, true freshman CeeDee Lamb wanted to have that physicality, but he was nowhere near as physically built as Jaleel is right now, even right now, at the time. So to be able to see that and to know that he wanted to stay and work his butt off with Smitty throughout the winter and obviously throughout the summer, I think that's definitely one on offense to continue to look out for. And I saw somebody else say, what about Theo Weiss? I mean, I think we're all expecting Theo Weiss to have a big bounce back year for sure. But no, I mean, I don't think that's a hot take at all, Chris. I think Marcus Stripling is definitely a reasonable take to have. My hot take is, and this is very hot, it's hot off the presses, I just thought about it. I think the type of mentality that Justin Broyles has, I think fits perfectly with Brent Venables. And I know he's been much maligned, but I can see him sparingly making big plays, especially in the run game. He's a very physical safety. I mean, he was a high 4-star. It's not like the dude is complete trash. And when you get a new coach in there, maybe he can scrap something out of him, right? At the end of the day, I think that's a hot take. It is. I know
at the same time, and look, this is my only pushback on that. This is my only pushback. When Kolar, and we all expect Kolar to be a pretty good NFL tight end.
He's a dude in college for sure.
But Kolar is not. It's not like he's running a 4.4 or a 4 or even a 4.5, and he's blowing right past you, not even doing any double moves, and he stop and goes, and he hits routes, none of that. He's just literally running right past you. Go back to the Iowa State game and watch. That's my only thing, is that in space, when it comes to covering guys, Broyles gets burned a lot. Okay? He gets burned a lot. You saw it for the past 2 years. My thing about this year was I knew it was for continuity purposes, and he was just one of those. He's an upperclassman and he gets it. So I'm not going to go with that, because we all know that some of Venables' better linebackers at Clemson were walk-ons. I mean, I think his middle linebacker for like a few years was a walk-on. So I'm not saying that they're at the same talent level. I'm just giving you an example. Like, hey, look, he's done more with less, right? So my whole thing is the reason why I say a hot take on a guy like, and we're forgetting about the Hawaii transfer, Tulane transfer, guys like that who people are really excited about. But the reason why I say somebody like Marcus Stripling, it's not so about the mental prowess, it's the athletic standpoint. Because Marcus Stripling has shown you that he can play with his hand on the ground or off the ground. Has he been excellent at both of those? I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say yes, that would be cap. But what I will say is this right here, from an athletics perspective and from some of the things that he wants to do and be multiple in that defense, a guy like Stripling fits that to the T.
Yeah.
So here's my hot take, right? And I don't know how hot this is, but I think that the two biggest names as far as the interior, and when I say interior, I mean people who are dedicated to that position, right? Nick Bonito is someone who is on the line, but if you're dropping into coverage half the time, you're excluded from this discussion right here, right? That's how I'm framing this. Yeah. Jeffrey Johnson and Jonah Luulu, both of the transfer guys y'all got, I think those two could pop bigger than any of the interior guys. And I like what y'all have on the interior. Jeffrey Johnson, man, I rewatched that OU Tulane game. I've rewatched it about 5 times. That kid is a dude, man. Like, that kid is legit. Really impressed with him. If you actually look and go back that game, whether or not he completely broke free, a lot of the mismanagement in the backfield came as a result of pressure from him. Whether he was the one that would be ultimately credited with it, or he was the one that started the chain of reaction that ended up causing chaos in the backfield, it started from him. Really like the Jeffrey Johnson pickup. And Jonah Luulu, he's someone who's got a lot of athletic upside. From what I've heard about him, even before he got to OU, I haven't heard much as far as like now. We'll see how he ends up come fall after time, but I like those two a lot. So like I said, maybe not a super hot take, but that's my hot take. And I do agree with JD here about your take, Chris, really not being that hot, because I think Marcus Stripling's reasonable. I think that's a very reasonable take. I think that's something we could see.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the breakdown and just kind of the ways that the things he likes to do out there. You may catch a D tackle playing DN. You may catch a DN playing D tackle. You may catch a DN playing a little bit of just stand up. You kind of don't know. Like we talked about it the other day when you with college football with JD, when he was talking about the peel back with those routes and everything, about how Venables likes to run a defense. Well, you look at a guy like Stripling, you look at a guy like Clayton Smith. I mean, that's another name that we haven't even named. Yeah. But you look at guys like that who may not be born burners, but at the same time, you're looking at them and you're like, oh man, that guy kind of fits that mold of like an Isaiah Sims Canick. You get what I'm saying? So when you look at those guys and you look at how one of the things that I liked what JD said was the simple fact that when you look at a Venables offense, one of the things that stands out to you once you watch the breakdown of the film, there may not be freaks at every position, but there are freaks at some of the key positions that he wants to use to fool you, to punish you, and just to outright play you. So that's what I'm saying. That's the reason why I say a guy like Marcus Stripling, I feel like he really fits that mold, simply because I think that he's athletic enough to kind of fit that. Not going to say he's a freak athlete, but at the same time, I'm really excited just as how multiple they are, because I feel like there's a lot of talent on that side of the ball. And now that Speed D is over with, it's going to be interesting to see, okay, you don't have to do any more twists and stunts, this and that. Just get after the guy. You got one. You really have just get and go. You know what I'm saying? And I think the biggest thing, like I was going to say with Jeffrey Johnson, guys like that, let me see the spring game first, because one of the things I want to see is if we're going to be running the ball and be so run heavy and everything, can we control that middle unlike we did last year?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you look at the middle of the defense, whether it was 3rd and 15, they were throwing a little stop route or a little curl route to the tight end or to like the little slot wide receiver. It was most of the time, what was it? It was an inside run for 2, 3, 4, 5 yards at a time. So that's one of the things that I'm looking for this year is can we control that middle to be able to say, no, when you get in third downs, you're going to be 3rd and 6 or 3rd and long.
Yeah. I mean, and look, that was one of the things I told you about very early, Chris. You remember you and I, we had that discussion, I mean, maybe week 3, when we kind of had that discussion of what concerned me about OU this past season. And I was like, man, over the middle, I mean, it's just clockwork. Like you get a team into 3rd down and you know what they're going to do. They're going to pick on the middle and they're going to make something happen. Outside of that, we're able to make some things shake, but that's neither here nor there. Keeping on the theme of spring practice, we got to go to my Tide now before we hit some other institutions, because y'all, there's a transfer running back at Alabama right now that I think is about to set college football on fire. Every single week, he's apparently won an award for being the top practice player, effort, everything, and that's Jahmyr Gibbs, running back from Georgia Tech to Alabama. He was rated as the #1 running back in the transfer portal at the time. I haven't looked since, but I mean, I think he'd be #1 or #2, probably depending on who's transferred, who's entered after. They've comped him to Kamara, right? He has what Bama desperately needs right now, in immense versatility. Now, Bama has versatile backs. Don't get me wrong in thinking I'm saying they don't. They have versatile backs. But the 2 most versatile backs Bama has right now are coming off of decently severe knee injuries. Neither one of them are 100% go right now. So being able to have that versatility in the terms and the way Jahmyr Gibbs gives it to you is unbelievably productive for Alabama's offense. I can't wait to see that in action. But from y'all, from the outside looking in, right, if there was one area you were looking for Alabama offensively this year to do something different, to maybe improve, what would it be?
I would, JP, you want to jump in first?
Yeah, we reworded it one more time, Ty.
So for the outside looking in, what would y'all say is one area you're looking for Alabama to improve this next upcoming year offensively?
I mean, it's hard to say much to improve on when you're Alabama, but I think definitely consistency at the running back position, like we talked about, like you talked about before, and like I know Ty, you and I have talked about it at periods of time. And obviously, I think you guys are gonna have a wide receiver step up. We always have wide receivers. But losing Jameson Williams is a big deal. And so, trying to figure out who's going to step up. Mechie as well, obviously, is gone. And so, right, he's not coming back, right?
Mechie, Williams, and Slade Bolden. All
Slade Bolden, yeah. So, I mean, obviously, you look at a guy like, I don't want to butcher his first name, but Hall is one name you definitely think of right off the bat. As somebody who's kind of the heir apparent and next up. So Bryce Young is obviously back. Your offensive line, for the most part, seems to have always has good continuity. So, I think ultimately it's going to come down to the skill positions, and can you guys get consistency from those spots?
Here's my take. I see people talking about offensive line. Yes, we can talk about the offensive line as well. But let's really talk about, okay, so there were a few things that lost you that game, the championship game, and it wasn't your offensive line. You guys were playing well enough to win that game. What really lost you the game? Some people would say it was Jameson going out. I think that the thing that lost you the game and what you need to see better is play calling down the stretch. Because a lot of the play calls didn't really make that much sense, especially down there at the goal line. I mean, you guys missed on a lot of touchdowns. You guys were running crossing routes and everything when you're on the 4-yard line. I'm like, I don't really know what's going on right here. It was like, oh, Bill O'Brien put Ajay Hall and some of the other wide receivers in position to make plays. You could say maybe he was a freshman, he wasn't poised enough, whatever the case may be. However, I just think it's play calling because throughout the season, I mean, go to the games that you guys lost. Go to the Texas A&M game and that game. It just seemed like either Texas A&M, it's like they had your number that game. Whatever you would throw at them, they would throw it right back, and then they would throw it again, and then you guys were like, okay, we got to try to answer them now. As far as Georgia, it was like, okay, you beat the hell out of them, and now it's like you're scoring, you're keeping up, but it just never felt. It was like, okay, who's going to break this whole little, kind of like this tie? It was pretty much a tie going into whatever quarter was whenever they just started busting it wide open. They just made more plays. But at the same time, on the offensive side of the ball, I question the play calling. I don't think the play calling was the greatest. And Ty, I think you and Jansen talked about that as well as some of your gripes with Bill O'Brien. I mean, as far as me, player-wise and even coaching-wise, I'm not really worried. However, I will give Sarkisian this. If Sarkisian was calling that game, I think you guys probably are sitting here with another national championship and probably laughing at Georgia saying, we beat you by 14 points this game. So that's kind of how I feel about it.
Look, I'm not going to lie. I think Sarkisian with Bryce Young would be magical to watch, right? Just as far as like enjoying football. Oh my gosh, I think Sark with Bryce Young would be amazing. Yeah. So here's some of the things like I have, right? I definitely don't disagree about play calling, but our offensive line was inconsistent at best last year. Jance points out that Bryce got hit 24 times in the national championship game. Here's what stands out to me. We talk about the Texas Longhorns offensive line not being very good. And, I mean, JP, you and I have talked extensively about that Texas's offensive line. You know that they actually graded higher than Alabama's offensive line last year?
That's what's crazy.
That's nuts.
That's what a good quarterback matters, right? That's when a dynamic and I'm not saying anything about Texas's quarterbacks, right? It's hard to win when you have a bad offensive line, but Bryce is special in terms of what he's able to do. And I know I'm talking to two OU fans, so y'all. Hey, but Casey Thompson, right? Like, I'm excited to see what he's going to do at Nebraska. I think that a lot of the faults at Texas weren't all at the feet of Casey Thompson. I think he gets blamed a lot for what really doesn't fall on his feet. That's a discussion for a different day. So the offensive line, here's my biggest worry with the offensive line. You make a great point, JP, in the fact that Alabama seems to always figure out the offensive line inevitably, right? That's kind of been their calling card. I'm worried that last year's offensive line was inconsistent, and then they lost who could be the number one player in the draft, Evan Neal. So now we're having to fix an already inconsistent offensive line without Evan Neal. That worries me. That worries me a bit, actually. Talented players in the room, but man, we got to figure out what's going on at the offensive line. And as far as O'Brien, I've always said this. I would love nothing more. I need to get in contact with somebody that can get me in contact with somebody on the team, somebody that I can talk to that will be able to break this. I want to know how much of his New England offense he's trying to implement. Because one of the things that's fascinating to me is that Bill O'Brien, while at New England, was known for one thing in particular, and that was his route modifications across the board. What he did in New England with Tom Brady and those receivers was unbelievable. That offense he runs is so potent with the route modifications, but it is very, very risky. Every wide receiver has a hot route audible. When he was at New England, every single wide receiver would be like, okay, well, if the cornerback sits on your route and isn't going to let you take underneath, you go over top. If he's bailing going over top and you're running a go, you audible your route onto a comeback, and the quarterback and wide receiver have to be on the same page. If he was trying to implement that at the college level, that I can see being very difficult and causing a lot of this confusion and some of this uncertainty that it looked like Alabama's offense had last year. That might not be the case, but that would certainly make some sense as far as why we didn't see the ball come out sometimes quite on time, because those route modifications very difficult to do. But I think that as Alabama fans right now, we're in a situation where we're very confident moving forward into next year. Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, is going to give us an unreal presence. Jace McClellan, Roydell Williams, Bryce Young. Love what we have there. Jermaine Burton coming from Georgia, I think, is going to be the next transfer wide receiver to boom at Alabama. We need something outside of that in the wide receiver room. We need an offensive line. But then the other side of the ball I want to hear from y'all on is defense. Because Bama might just have the best player in college football sitting on their defensive front in Will Anderson.
Yep.
What are y'all looking for Alabama's defense this year?
I think JP, I think I could speak for you and just say, DB wise, just see what your room. Obviously we know what your room is going to be like. You guys are going to have a plethora of talent, but
yeah,
maybe that was the one weak point during the national championship game. It wasn't for the whole year, but it was kind of inconsistent. It was definitely inconsistent, but you could attribute that to the fact that you guys were playing a lot of freshmen too. Yeah. So it's one of those things where you're just looking for that DB room to be solidified again. To be tough again.
And if I may, JP, before you go, because one of the things I had a lot of OU fans ask me about when y'all hired Valai, and they were like, oh, well, what do you think about this hire? Because your DB struggled so bad in the national championship. And I had to tell people that's not on Valai. We were playing a true freshman in Kool-Aid McKinstry who had true freshman moments. If you have a true freshman DB, they're going to have true freshman moments. He also showed how talented he is. And then our other starting cornerback went down, so we had two brand new defensive backs in. The fact that Georgia only could capitalize that for a quarter, I'll take it. Right? We were still in position to win. That's not the reason we lost. There's a ton of reasons we lost that game. I'll take it. So I'm looking forward to that. Absolutely. JP, go ahead. I just wanted to say that because a lot of people have pointed that out, and I just want to say that's not on Valai.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with Chris. I think the secondary was the only spotty issue you could really look at, I think. But again, like you said, they were young, inexperienced, had dealt with a lot of injuries. And as we all three of us know, the best defense, our best help for your secondary is to have a great defensive line. And when you have a player like Will Anderson, who can almost get to the quarterback at will, that's going to help, the young defensive backs that you guys have. And again, they'll have another year under their belt as well. Obviously, they have a new cornerbacks coach, and that's neither here nor there. But Alabama's used to rotating coaches, so that's nothing necessarily new. Nick will figure it out. But yeah, I think ultimately the defensive line is going to be the factor for you guys, just like it is for most of the rest of college football. Game is won in the trenches, and when you have a player like Will Anderson, who I'm not saying Nick Benito is Will Anderson, but just, imagine if Will Anderson is dropping in coverage on third down instead of rushing and what that does. So as long as he's putting his hand in the ground going at QB, y'all going to be all right.
Yeah. We drop him actually a surprising amount into coverage, but not I'm glad we don't do it as much as other teams did it, a.k.a. y'all dropping Nick Benito into coverage. We did it a good amount, but not that much. And I was
he had reasons to do it. Like, we just did it just because I felt like this is what it felt like.
There was one game where I was like, okay, this makes sense, right? To drop Benito. Chris and I talked about this, and that was Nebraska. Because you were using Benito to spy Martinez because he was just keeping him in check in that regard. And if you look, anytime he was spying Martinez didn't really get a positive play on his legs. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, fair game. This makes sense. Cool. If you don't rush him this game, that's fine. But here we go. Here's my take on the secondary. Eli Ricks comes in from LSU, right? Yeah. And he was the second best corner in the nation when he was playing as a true freshman behind Derek Stingley, in my opinion, right? Like, as far as ceiling goes, maybe not in terms of present day, but when you looked at what he did as a freshman plus his ceiling, I love the prospect of he and Kool-Aid McKinstry as our 1-2. Both guys former 5 stars, both guys former 1 DBs in the nation. Here's where it gets interesting to me. Both safeties stayed. and Jordan Battle and Helms. We have Brian Branch, who's a very, very serviceable nickel, but also Malachi Moore, who played the nickel position and was first team All SEC freshman. Jance, am I right on that? He was first team All SEC, correct? Or was he second team? Jance will get me taken care of in the comments. He's an encyclopedia when it comes to that. So I like that right there. But what both of y'all said, I think, is completely correct. You got Will Anderson on one side, who did 17 and a half sacks this past season. Across from him is true freshman Dallas Turner, who notched 8.5 sacks himself. So Bama's pass rush right now might just be the best in the nation. My question is the interior. Christian, last year, Bama had 9.5 sacks from the interior from one player. That's going to be hard to replicate, right? And I'm not saying it has to come from one player, but you need someone from the interior. Jance tells me it was first team. So yes, Malachi Moore, another player we got to get on the field. My biggest concern right now is probably interior. I say concern loosely, and then inside linebacker. Henry To'o returns. Love what he's able to do. I don't know what we're going to do at the other inside linebacker position. There's Jalen Moody, very talented, been in the system. There's a guy we've been bouncing around between inside linebacker and outside linebacker, and Deontay Lawson. And then there's true freshman Jahad Campbell, who Nick Saban says could play just about anywhere on the defense. They have him bouncing between inside and outside. His comp, I don't know if y'all see, they comp him to Micah Parsons, which is nutty.
Well,
yeah, this kid's a dude.
I would say as far as Bama defensively, I think some Bama fans may still be kind of upset how you guys were 2 years ago, not last year. But if you remember how the defense was, it was just really inconsistent and it wasn't up to, I guess, the standard. But this year, I don't see any reason why you guys won't put up any better numbers than what you did last year. And I definitely don't think that you will have games against teams that you should blow out by 30, like the Florida game, for example. Granted, I do think Napier has something going down. I think he's building something down there in Florida. I think Florida will be better this year, but I digress. But I will say, as far as Alabama is concerned, I don't really see any holes in your team. Obviously, the offensive line has to be better. You know, it's funny how you would I mean, how would you challenge? How are you going to go and challenge a guy who won the Heisman Trophy and tell him, hey, we need you to still be better this year? Well, you put on film in the national championship game and you say, hey, look, you're still playing with the same old line. So you may have to be Superman this year. You may have to be Mr. Invincible. But it's one of those things where you wanted them to take that step. But you're thinking they should take that step. Because at the same time, you guys have a lot of 5 stars on that offensive line that you guys have been recruiting for the past 2 or 3 years. And the thing about it is that now they're going to get a chance to be in the system, not just for 1 year, but for 2 years. So it's one of those things where hopefully Bill O'Brien is not like Lincoln Riley in that aspect where everybody's begging you to run zone, please. Because when you ran zone, we finally got to see the real Spencer Rattler. We finally got to see the offensive line look pretty good. Hell, the running game looked really good against 2JP, K-State.
Yep.
So basically what I'm saying is this right here is that hopefully Bill O'Brien is the type of coach, and he's been doing this way longer than anybody. But hopefully he's one of those coaches where he won't be so reluctant to actually adapt to his players opposed to just saying the players will adapt to what I'm running. Get what I'm saying? Because that's the only way. Because if the offensive line is still not up to par, then you have to figure out schemes and ways to get, because your guys, as far as skill players, they're going to be better than the other guys. Your Joes are going to be better than their Jimmies. Okay, so the biggest thing is that they're still going to be able to win those one-on-one battles and all the rest of that. Bryce is going to be able to be Bryce, but at the same time, actually help him out by helping the offensive line out. You may have to run with some training wheels on there from time to time, but at the same time, you should still try to adapt to those players to see what they can run. I mean, I just go back to it as far as Lincoln Riley. I don't know if he necessarily did that last year because it just seemed like he was so reluctant. And then it's like it's like having a big problem with your girlfriend, and then all of a sudden you guys get married, thinking that's gonna like make everything better, right? It's not gonna make everything better because you didn't do the work to actually help out what was actually going on. So I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
If we're done with the Alabama spring talk, I got a question for you that I had on my show, and I would love to have you and JP answer it.
Yeah, go for it. I think that pretty much will concludes anything Alabama. If there's comments, we'll hit that. But like, yeah, that was a great synopsis of Bama.
So basically, my question is this right here, okay? When you have a head coach go to the podium and he says, players are coming to me and they're thanking me for holding players accountable, for having structure, for doing A, B, C, E, D, F, and G, and all the rest of that, right? When you have players coming and saying that, the question that I have for you guys is basically this. I'll just say it directly. Did Lincoln Riley leave a toxic culture, or did he have a toxic culture at OU? Because I know one of the things I talked to my uncle about, he brought it up to me, and he was like, I think Lincoln Riley had a toxic culture there because you hear about players coming to practice high, all the rest of that stuff, yada, yada. But when you think about it, you say, okay, it's like the culture just really shifted, and we could say some players got soft in different positions, different areas, and you're saying that even though he won the way he did, winning those 6 Big 12 championships, making it to all those college football playoffs, you're still looking at the teams that say they progressively got worse, or it progressively became worse, right? It's like some of the big games that they won, it wasn't like they won those convincingly. It wasn't like an Alabama win where you're winning by 30 against Georgia and basically making them look like frauds the entire year, right? So, I'll open the floor and just ask you guys, like, do you believe do you believe the culture at OU when Raleigh was here was toxic?
JP, I'll let you go first as the OU fan, because I think this is a really interesting question.
Yeah. I think we have no choice but to admit that it was. And I think the most frustrating part about it is, and Trav and I have talked about this ad nauseum. At Oklahoma, first of all, you're not used to a coach leaving, right, without getting fired. So, like, regardless, when you have your coach, you support your coach, especially when that coach is part of winning 6 straight Big 12 titles and 4 straight as a head coach and goes to 3 college football playoffs. Like, it winning masks a lot of things. And so many times, we had the conversation of sunshine pumpers versus not, right?
Yeah.
It was hard to actually take a hard look at things because you're winning games. And so some of the stuff seemed nitpicky. Like, there's no way this is a thing. And I'll go ahead and say it now because it's over. Ty, you remember my uncle that you came on my YouTube channel with? That was a 20-year scout.
Great time.
He had been in my ear all season saying something's got to change. The practices are terrible. The coaches are terrible. And I'm not saying I was arguing with him, because how am I going to argue with somebody who has that type of inside info? But it just seemed off to me because I'm like, really? Like, because that's not what Lincoln would portray. Like, he seemed like the family guy. We did the champion barbecues. We, you saw him at Kyler and Baker's ceremony and the relationships that they built and them crying, right? Like, there was nothing to the outside eye necessarily that would have suggested there was a toxic culture. And not necessarily to say that Lincoln Riley is the worst guy in the world. I know a lot of Sooner fans probably feel that way. But I think more than anything, I really don't think he was up to the snuff of holding players accountable, that he would rather have been their friend. And that's what my uncle said. It's like their practices were very loosey-goosey. And things, would just be kind of ran. Not, I'm not saying it was like they're out in LA or anything like that and just letting anybody come in, because they didn't let anybody come in. But it's just, like I said, they weren't working as hard as they probably needed to. And so to Chris's point, when you have players come in and you have players say, thank you for providing structure. Thank you for being able to get in me and say, hey, this is not how things go. It's important because you can do both, right? As an athletic director, for me, I'm hard on my kids, but at the same time, I'm building relationships with them because you should be able to do both. That's why Nick Saban's the GOAT, right? Because he does both at such a high level. Okay, and that's why we're excited about Brent Venables because he seems to be doing both at a really, really high level, and he understands that. Because if you lean one way, kids don't like you. You lean the other way, they like you too much, and you can't ever challenge them or get anything out of them, no matter how much talent you have. It's hard, but you have to be able to find that balance. And I think what we can say is, character aside, because I'm not going to come on here and besmirch Riley. I don't know him personally. We can at least just say he definitely leaned towards he was more of a friend than being willing to get in them, especially even with Benny Wiley. Like, there was no accountability, strength and conditioning wise. So that's going to change with BV. That's going to change with Schmitty for sure. And ultimately, it's going to bring the best out of these kids.
So I'm going to take a bit of a different approach for this, but ultimately I'm going to arrive at the same place both of you have, right? But I'm going to piggyback off of something JP said because it's something I had written down, and I love that you brought it up. Did he promote a toxic culture? Like, did he actively promote it? I don't believe so. But that doesn't mean that by extension of how it was ran that a toxic culture wasn't fostered, right? Both of those ideologies can exist in the same world. Mm-hmm. From people I've talked to that interacted with Lincoln Riley, before that happened, I never heard a bad word about him. Okay? Mm-hmm. But loose was a feeling I got, never something voiced. This is all my opinion now, and I need to be very clear in that. Everything I'm saying from here out is my opinion based off of what I was told. Loose was a good word. JP, you hit the nail on the head. Lincoln was, in my opinion, more worried about trying to be liked and foster a positive relationship with these young men in that capacity. Right? Thinking that, okay, well, if I can almost be like older brother here and like let some things slide that wouldn't slide over there, show that understanding that we can promote a really family and hip and new age culture here. And to a degree, I think it worked.
Yeah.
There has to be a point, and that point never was established, in my opinion, creating some of the problems we saw at OU. Problems that aren't absent at other institutions. And look, you're talking about how many kids below the age of 21 in one room? If you got us three right here before we were 21 years old in a room together, dumb things would be going down. I can promise you.
For sure.
Things like that happened is not disparaging on an institution in and of itself, but it was the frequency of what had happened. And Chris, one thing you and I talked about during the season, I don't know if you remember, there was a word I started to use, undisciplined.
Yeah.
And that was my first look into, and I'm going to come straight out. I never thought that Lincoln Riley, like, oh, we'll leave and it'll fix things. I'm in a different position now because of who y'all got. But even when I was thinking OU looks undisciplined, it was never, oh, well, OU's undisciplined and therefore Lincoln Riley needs to go. It was, oh, these penalties right here. It's like I'm watching a damn UNT game. I'm sitting there like, these are penalties that are discipline-based penalties. These are the type of penalties that kill you if you're a coach. Yeah. So did Lincoln Riley promote a toxic culture? I have a hard time believing so. But did he allow a toxic culture to foster? Yes, I believe he did.
That was the thing, when speaking to my aunt, shout out to my aunt, he just laid it out for me. He's like, nephew, you got to look at it. We did not dominate teams like we should have. Undisciplined. When you talk about some of the stuff that's like come out and everything, it's just like it's it's hard not to say that. And I did give him some blowback because I was like, look, now let me play devil's advocate here. 6 Big 12 championships in a row. Okay.
Yeah.
College football playoffs. I mean, you arguably say they should have won it in 2018 with Baker Mayfield. They should have been. But at the same time, you're just saying that progressively the defense had a nice little band-aid on it that kept it together, right? I'm not going to say that he fixed the defense. I don't believe he fixed the defense.
They made strides, but it never.
They made strides, but
made strides for sure.
And I guess we call it now at its pinnacle, at its peak in year 3. Year 3 was not close to where year 2 ended, or where year 1 left off. Okay.
Completely.
So I mean that's kind of where I'm at, and I'm not just going to blame Riley for that, but I'm just saying when you look at some of the actions and the inactions that happened at the program, we're not even talking about one of the bigger things that happened with, let's talk about the catalyst for it. 2 out of your 3 top players get knocked out of the championship game against LSU, which, for better or for worse, you can say it wouldn't have mattered. But to me, it wouldn't have mattered. I'm just a diehard OU fan. And then going into the next season, everybody is hype about this team. I mean, the things that I believe that, gosh, what is his name? Mikey Henderson was going to do that H-back position. I know they moved him to running back, but the things that Mikey Henderson was going to do was going to be stupid. Then he would have been – everybody talks about, like, you look at the numbers, you look at how he was used, talking about our H-back this year, not Braden Willis, but Jeremiah Hall.
Yep.
But you look at Mikey Henderson, you're saying Mikey Henderson was a freak at that position, okay? He was so versatile. But then the simple fact that, okay, however you want to feel about Seth McGowan, but Trajan Bridges, who a lot of people said was the best wide receiver out of that 5-star trio, never got a fair chance. Not a fair chance. He never got really a chance to show anything. And the fact that that all played out like it did, and it's still playing out, it's still going on, it's still ongoing. That right there kind of leads to the fact that you would think maybe he didn't promote a toxic culture, but he did let it foster. So I just wanted to bring that question up to you guys, because I mean it's a good question, and it's going to be a question that actually goes on for some time, because people are going to wonder that, especially if, and I say, if put emphasis on if Brent Venables can do what we all believe he's going to do, which is win a lot around OU, and win in his way, which seems to be a more disciplined and kind of old school approach, is going to make you think like, okay, well, maybe the dam has some cracks in it under Riley.
Yeah, and the fact that you had that high profile players be involved in something like that should have been the biggest red flag you can imagine for the culture. Because again, I think I would at least personally say I dismissed it as individual idiocy, right? Because that happens. Like, you can be in a great culture, but you can have individual idiots.
And I'm not even going to bury him because of that, because it happens at institutions that have great culture as well.
It happens all the time. But
there is a but. Absolutely.
Tell JD and Ty. Tell me that if Nick Saban, going into a year where you're like, this might be the best Bama team we've ever had, you have a 5-star wide receiver that's expected to do great things. You have a 4-star, tight end, we'll just call him, that is going to be probably the most versatile you've had at that specific position ever, even more than Demetri Flowers, more than Trey Miller, more than Jeremiah Hall. And then you also have a running back who is at least probably going to be in your top 2. And all 3 of them are involved in this armed robbery case, like with a gun. Like, what would you feel like? Like, how would you feel?
Blown away. Just
Right?
blown away for sure.
Yeah.
It's different if it's a one-off, but like for three prominent players to seem so like aloof and just honestly to seem like they had the freedom to even think that they could go and do something like that, especially Trajan. After his might be individual idiocy. I'll throw that out there,
Okay.
right? Because he already had things that are going on for him, right? And again, I'm not going to slander the kids. They made mistakes. I know that they feel terrible, but just pointing out, like he had Sooner Nation riding for him. Like I was about to go downtown to NCAA office because it's in Indianapolis. I was about to protest for him. Like I really was, because they was messing him over with the weed charges. And then for him to go and do that, I was like, there's no way he was involved in it. He just couldn't have been, because that's dumb. I'll tell a quick story, and I'll let you go, Ty. I had a student athlete, my first year as athletic director, in 2020 in the fall. So she had hard home life, volleyball player, hard home life. I'm trying to build a relationship. I'm not a very black and white guy. I'm very gray. I'll give you opportunities if I felt like opportunities are deserved to be given. So I'm looking at the situation. She gets accused of smoking weed in a school bathroom. Mind you, you might be like, oh, like at a regular school, it's not necessarily something crazy. I'm at a small Christian school, like a 90 kid Christian school. Okay, just mind you, 1A. So that's something that's kind of unfathomable at that type of school. Just so you have context. So I'm like, there's no way she did this. Like, you have to be just a special kind of stupid to come in to walk into school with a joint in a bathroom. It's a K through 12 school. That's the elementary bathroom, and you telling me you was in there smoking weed. I couldn't believe it. I was not going to believe it, right? And she told me a sob story, and it's something I learned. I believed her. I said, you know what? We're going to have your back. Then I found out 2 months later, she was over here telling people how to let her get off, right? And now she's like, oh, I told them that, whatever. But it just goes to show you, like, these things can happen. Like, you can build whatever culture you want. There can still be individuals who do things that you could not fathom at the end of the day. And I think that's where Trajan lied. But when you had Mikey and you also had Seth kind of be part of that's where it was like, okay, time out. How did that happen? Who was supposed to be with them, right? Because they're 18, 19-year-old kids. You guys probably knew at some rate some of this was potentially an issue. How did this happen?
So what I was going to say, and I'm not even going to say a name, because the two of you know exactly who I'm talking about, and it doesn't do any purpose for me to say a name now. It does no good for me to attach it. The reason why I never looked at that, and looking back on it, right, we can all look at this differently, okay? But the reason why in the moment I was sitting there and I had someone ask me, right, someone who wasn't an OU fan, they were like, well, this means that OU has a bad culture. I argued with them and I said, look, one of those individuals, if I'm not mistaken, two of them, but I know for a fact one of them, they have been getting in trouble since high school. Yeah. I was like, this is like, they were doing wild stuff in high school. And so when I heard that was the name, I was like, oh, I hate to say this, but like, I'm not overtly surprised. I'm surprised as can be. But at the same time, if you told me, okay, well, here's what just happened, does this name, if it had to be anybody, was this name that's going to surprise you? One of those names didn't, because of the track record. And y'all got to also remember where I live.
Yeah.
In this North Texas area. So I was very, very familiar with hearing things through the grapevine about one of them. So, I mean, now we can look at it differently. But that's a great question. One that I think isn't, as much as we can answer this question now, we're going to see the answer play out ultimately this year, right? Yeah. Because we'll get an evaluation of USC, and like I did a video with JD, college football with JD. For everybody in here right now, look out, Wednesday 6:15. JD and I, we're doing a weekly show now. JD and I, we're going to be doing weekly content for breaking down everything y'all want to see. That's going to be a ton of fun. But one of the things we were talking about is Lincoln Riley gives USC an exponentially better chance than did Clay Helton. I think everybody in the world will agree. Everybody in the world. But there's still a lot we need to see, right? Even though the pack is down, there's still a lot we need to see. So this year is going to be fantastic. As we're closing, though, I do want to focus on some chat. But this question right here, Texas or Oklahoma, who's under more pressure as a new coach, Brent Venables or Sark in year 2? I will go first if it's okay. To me, it's Sark in year 2. The reason being is I think there's a lot of pressure on Brent Venables, but I don't think it looks the same as other pressure. The reason being is one of the things I'm interested in y'all's opinion of. I think that OU could replicate the year they had right now.
Yeah.
Right, like I think that's a very real possibility. I think that y'all could be back to where you're used to being, but I think a very real possibility is the exact same year you had now, which is what 98% of college football prays for, right? Is the type of season y'all had where maybe you get 2 losses. That's a different type of pressure than Steve Sarkisian, who has to turn around a program that didn't do well last year, and then he just got in the biggest quarterback Texas has had since Vince Young. That's a different type of pressure. So for me, the answer is Sark.
Oh, I'll jump out and say Sark for sure. I think what Venables is I think he could replicate what he did last year. I think that now, granted, it would be tough, but even if he went 9-3, something like that, I think this would be pretty much a rollover or a mulligan year people would give him simply because still kind of in a transition as far as from the old regime to this regime. Absolutely. And a lot of people just want to see him fail just so they can have that I told you so moment, right? So my whole thing would be with Sark simply because when you look at the season they had last year, and it seems like a lot of Texas fans have amnesia. I'll try to not take shots, Ty. Don't worry. Seems like they have amnesia because a lot of them are forgetting about 5-7 last year. Like I told you guys before, I prayed for that. There is power in prayer, but I will just leave it there. Okay. But one of the reasons why I say that he has pressure on him is simply because, okay, with Mullet Boy or Quinn Ewers coming in, all hype. Okay. All hype, no tape. But the quarterback position, I mean, you're still coming in there this year trying to figure out what are we going to be? What is our identity? Are we going to be able to finish games this year? Defensively, I came into the season. Ty, you and me talked about it countless times. We thought PK was going to be a great defensive coordinator. And I'm not saying that he's not, but the question is out there on him now. Was it more to do with the head coach that got fired from Washington that took his spot? With the defense that he had out there, or was it really all him, right? Because a lot of Texas fans, there was a bunch of Texas fans, and they can say they weren't, but a lot of Texas fans were saying, I wish Chris Ash was still here. Now, my whole thing is that you go out there and you get arguably one of the best analyst hires in Coach Patterson, okay? But there's only so much that he can do, okay? But you bring in a lot of talent. I will give Texas that. You bring in a hell of a class. But at the same time, there's still a lot more pressure. And Sark may say it's not, but it's still pressure to win because you can't play all those 5-star freshmen. You can't play all those freshmen, especially on the offensive line. You can't do that. Because the thing about it is that it's not about Hudson Card or Quinn Ewers. You got to think about who's your star player.
Bijan.
Okay. And Bijan takes awkward hits. As much as they want to say he doesn't, he takes awkward hits. And in my opinion, Keelan Robinson, but definitely Roshan Robinson, they need carries too. But Sark likes to have a bell cow. Okay. So there's a lot more questions on that team than it is with this OU team, simply because if you think about it, in essence, OU has a lot returning. And a lot of their players that were playing last year, you got to think about it. Ethan Downs was what? A true freshman.
Mm-hmm.
Billy Bowman, true freshman. Latrell McCutcheon, true freshman. Jalen Redmond, he wasn't even healthy for a good part of the season. Get what I'm saying? So you have a lot of guys out there. Jalil Farouk, true freshman. I mean, he didn't really get to play, but he played towards the end of the season. You saw him out there starting with the Kansas game. So, and this year, even if you would have had Caleb Williams coming back, what was Caleb Williams? A true freshman. So there was a bunch of players on OU's team last year who got a lot of time, a lot of tick, and they were freshmen. So now you're bringing those guys back, and they have nothing to do except for build on that. With Texas, you have guys coming in, you have question marks. Because the thing is that we all think Xavier Worthy is special. I'll give him that. But I still will say this: the verdict is out on whatever number 2 they think they're going to have. Because Nayor put up numbers at Wyoming. He did really well at Wyoming, and I'm rooting for him. I hope he has a good season. However, Josh Moore, that's all I can see right now. Show me something different than just another Josh Moore who will show up every now and then. So, I mean, for me, Texas just I'm sorry for being long-winded, but Texas has a lot of questions to answer. They have more questions. OU has a lot of questions to answer. But if you look at it right now, I feel like they may have 3 or 4 more questions than we do.
Man, unequivocally, Sarkisian is under more pressure because not only because of just the nature of where he's at and the history of Texas and their boosters and their lack of patience, but he went 5-7 last year, which was worse than Turtle Tom did the last 3 years, and so he got fired. And his successor comes in with everybody saying, "Oh my gosh, he's going to blow the." You remember it, Chris? What they say? He's gonna set the world on fire. The Alabama offense is coming to Texas. It's over. 5-7, right? The reason I think that Brent Venables is not under as much pressure, at least nationally. Now I still don't think he's under much pressure internally, or at least like Oklahoma fans wise, just because we're privy to everything. But even nationally, people think that we've fallen off more than we actually have. Like if you talk to Teddy Lehman or you see Teddy Lehman, he's been dunking on national writers left and right because they come in pushing this narrative that, well, you lost Lincoln Riley, who's a top 5 coach. And again, that's neither here nor there. He definitely did have a lot of wins. They lost 2 5-star quarterbacks on their roster. They lost a 4 or 5-star wide receiver. They graduated a ton of people. Nick Benito, Brian Samoa, Perrin, yada yada yada, right? From what was supposed to be their best team ever, and we're supposed to expect them to compete is what is being pushed. But the reality is, we bring back enough talent, both offensively and defensively, and really we upgraded in a lot of areas, coaching wise, especially, whether people want to believe that or not. So I think that ultimately, nationally, if we're looking at it from that perspective, people are not expecting a Brent Venables led OU team to do anything of significance. I really don't think this year, as opposed to Steve Sarkisian, who is in his second year at Texas. It is Texas, like you said. He did just get Quinn Ewers, supposed to be, the heir apparent, and yeah, they have Pete Kwiatkowski from Washington. They have Gary Patterson, that is an analyst now. I mean, from all intents and purposes, like we do every offseason, Texas is back, right? So I think that Sark definitely has more pressure on him. And really, I can throw shots or whatnot, but if I'm being honest and genuine, what it boils down to is that he didn't make a bowl game last year, right? Mm-hmm. If he lives up to his nickname, 7-win Sark, I think there's less pressure on him. But he won 5 games. Didn't even make a bowl game.
I'll jump in and just say, like, there are things to be excited about if you're a Texas fan. Let me extend that olive branch. One of the things I'll definitely say is that you helped your secondary out by going and getting the Ryan Watts. I think you're going to see probably his best football, simply because he's back home, Little Elm, Texas. He's from Little Elm, Texas. So I mean, that's just right down the highway from them, you know. And I think for him, he's getting a new chance, another opportunity to go and do something that he want, you know, that he loves to do. So I'm cool on that. As much as I hate to give him credit, Overshown did have a really good season last year. I really like Overshown at linebacker. I was hoping he would transfer. I tell him to come and put on some Crimson Cream. We'll be okay with you then. But outside of that, I mean, they still have question marks at different positions, just like a lot of people. Okay. But at the same time, there are things to be excited about. I can tell you this right here. The second weekend in September, that place is going to be rocking down there. For how long? I don't know.
In attendance.
For how long?
For how long? I really don't know. These are things we don't know. But at the same time,
rocking for 60 minutes.
How you gonna be rocking for 60 minutes?
Yeah, you are.
You're gonna be, yeah. They're gonna ask you to leave by halftime. If you get beat up at that game,
I've been kicked out of nicer places than that, so it doesn't matter to me.
Wow.
Well, so, I'm just saying. Go ahead.
No. Finish. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying. I mean, there are things to be excited for, and I see Sean Stapleton talk about Baylor. Let me say it one more time, Ty. You know what I'm about to say. Baylor comes to Norman and they go to Austin this year. Let me say that one more time. Baylor goes to Norman and they go to Austin this year. They can't drop a game to TCU and then expect to go on the road. You're not going home this time. And I know we all talk about Dave Aranda. Dave Aranda is a defensive guru. He's a genius. I get that. But at the same time, let's not forget who his quarterback is. Jerry Bohannon is not elite. I'm sorry, he's not. Okay? And that's the reason why I always laugh when people say, you guys are not even, you're not even going to be in the Big 12 championship game. Dylan Gabriel's not great. Well, if you look at the two quarterbacks that played for the Big 12 championship last year, that's all I got to say. That's all I got to say. I'm not even going to do it, Tad. I'm not going to do it.
Before we bow out of here, we're going to do one more question. We're going to hit it really quick. It's just going to be a fun one, not football related, but I think it'll be a lot of fun to end it on. What I will say, and I've said this to you extensively, Chris, I've said it. I don't know that I've actually said it to you, JP. There's no better year for OU to have had what happened to them. That's awkward to say. There's not been a better year in the Big 12 for this exodus at OU to happen. Yeah. Oklahoma State has a bunch of players transfer out and they lose Jim Knowles. Iowa State lost all of their top talent, quarterback, running back. They've lost a lot. Texas has question marks everywhere. Baylor has to replicate what they just did. Texas Tech is Texas Tech. I mean, we can go all the way down the line. There's not a better year than for y'all to have had what happened because the entirety of the Big 12 had something. Y'all just have a bit more answers right now than some of those other teams, like an Iowa State, like an Oklahoma State. And that's why whenever we're having this conversation of, is Oklahoma going to have a down year, my question is always met with a question. What's your expectations? If your expectations are a college football playoff berth, maybe they will have a quote-unquote down year. If your expectations is a replication of the year they just had, I don't think you're going to be disappointed in the slightest. That's how I've always approached that question. I'll let y'all respond as soon as I post this, and then we'll get out of here. Should Will have done it or not? Chris, what say you, the attorney in the house?
I would say check back with me in August and I'll get right back to you. If that doesn't go too far over your head. No, I would say on the real though, I would say he shouldn't have did it. I wouldn't have did it. At least not in that. It would have probably been private, but at the same time, I mean, I don't know. It's Will Smith, so he gets a pass. Huh?
I said my man dropped an August Alsina reference.
I did. If y'all get what I'm saying, y'all see what I'm saying there. Check back in August and I can tell you what really would happen. But at the same time, I would just say, nah, he shouldn't have did it. He shouldn't have did it. What about you, JP?
Yeah, he absolutely shouldn't have done it. I mean, I've had conversations ad nauseum with a bunch of my friends and today about it, and it just, to me, it's sad. Like, because you have, and Chris, you would definitely understand this for sure. Like, the Oscars is a prestigious show, and out of all the award shows, it has been criticized as being as too white. I'm not gonna say whether I agree or not. I'm just saying it's been said, right? It's the whitest of the award shows. So you have two prominent black men, right? Two very respected black men, and you have that happen on national television in front of everybody. It's frustrating. It's frustrating for me from that point because it's already tough on black men as it is out here, and we already know how it's going to be spent. And so that's the more serious side of it, obviously. The other side of it, bruh, like, just smack them backstage, like at the after party. Like, we would all understand. Like, am I saying that Chris didn't deserve to have hands put on him for what he said regarding Jada's condition? No. Like, I think that he deserved to at least have words be exchanged.
Mm-hmm.
But at the Oscars, dog, like, you walked up on stage at the Oscars and just like leave West Philly in your seat for that one. For that one, that's how I feel about it.
I will say, I can't say that I wouldn't have walked on stage and slapped Lincoln Riley at a college football award show just like that if he would have just left. I can't say, hell, if I was to get invited to the college football award show this year and Lincoln Riley was there for something with Caleb Williams, I can't say I wouldn't walk on stage and slap him too. I'm just saying. So you might hear me when he talks when I can see it now when Kirk Herbstreit asked him, he's like, Coach, what was it about USC that made you want to leave OU? And when he talks about, well, I had a great time at OU, you will see me walk on stage, slap him, go back to my seat by JP, and I will say, keep OU out your fucking mouth. All right. I'm not that will happen. We are not, look, I am not going to badmouth that man anymore, but I will say this, move on, next subject, stop talking about OU, because I can tell you now, Ty knows, when I came on a show one time and I said Lincoln Riley had the nerve to say, I didn't take Oklahoma players, I took players from the portal. I said, look, I can't deal with this ignorance anymore, all right? Because at the end of the day, I'm calling you Lincoln Riley, but I could be calling you Tebow. All right.
Oh my gosh.
So as it pertains to the Will situation, here's my take on it. I completely agree. Like, that was a joke that you can feel some type of way about the joke. I'm going to take a more like not legal approach to it in terms of like legal, but I'm the theory behind it. And y'all will get what I mean. The problem that I have with it is like, yeah, that was a nasty comment. Words should have been had backstage. But if we're justifying what Will did, we're creating a slippery slope because offense is objective. Offense is not subjective. Everybody has a different definition of what offends them. And now if we're dedicating the speech of society based on that which is objective, we're in a bad place because then if you just tell me your hair looks bad today, I can smack the hell out of you because that offended me. Now, terrible example considering what we're talking about, but the point remains, right? Like now we're creating a slippery slope of what offense is. That being said, though, can we talk about Chris Rock's chin? I mean, my man needs a UFC contract expeditiously. Looking like Chris Matinho just getting slapped around in the ring.
He said his
handled it
cheeks.
very professionally too.
Yeah, he said his gums absorbed it. So I was like, well.
Dog, somebody said kind of similar to what you said earlier, Chris. The joke you said. I saw somebody on Twitter say if Chris Rock would have came it back immediately and said, "Man, if he's this pissed in March, imagine what he's like in August."
Yeah, that would have been funny.
Would have been bad. Would have been bad. But yeah, for those of y'all out there that are saying it's fake, like really?
Tijuana, you're correct. I mixed those up, but you get my point. Point still stands.
Yes.
It's not fake. He slapped the hell out of him.
No, and if you watch the whole thing, there's no way you like the unedited version. At first, I thought maybe, but when it comes to the unedited version, he's like, "Keep my wife's name out your mouth," right? Then I'm like, "Oh," I said, "Oh, that's real. He's hot. He's hot." So
it's kind of. I mean, I ain't gonna lie. That's how I felt about OSU fans after Bellum this year. Yeah, I know that's how you still feel about people who talk about the kick six, because the Auburn fans are. That's what they live on. Matter of fact, how are things going down there in Auburn right now?
Yeah, after all
he's still the coach. That investigation has been going on for a while, quite a while.
It's kind of wild.
Who the hell knows? Auburn is every which way. I mean, they're interesting to watch. They just lost their quarterback to the transfer portal. We'll have to
lost another one.
Yeah. I mean, it's who the hell knows what's going on at Auburn right now? But what a dumpster fire! Yeah, Auburn is a dumpster fire. Yeah, right now.
Saying,
great minds think alike.
I haven't heard anything from Auburn since all that went down, and you're like, Petrino got canned in less than a week, and then this guy has been here for like 3 or 4 months.
They are down bad. It's a mess.
But guys, that's about it for us. I know JP, go ahead. I know you got a kid. I don't want to keep you
the last thing I was gonna say is also just going back to the Will Jada thing for a second. A lot of OU fans have felt that way about Browns fans this last week and a half about Baker.
Oh,
keep Baker's name out your mouth. That's kind of how it's gone down on Twitter. It's been we can talk for another hour about that situation, but go ahead.
They also fired Bill Belichick and Nick Saban, but
Yep. They know what they're doing.
Yeah. But guys, that's it for us this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for all the comments. It was a ton of fun as usual. I was joined tonight by Chris Griffin of the Horns Down podcast, JP of Indy Sooner, both phenomenal content creators, both staples of the channel. Chris, JP, where can they find you at?
Hey guys, you can find me at Chris with a K. Also, you can find my guy Seth Oliveris at Seth Oliveris. We just released an episode. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff. You can find us on YouTube. Find us on Twitter at the Horns Down. At the Horns Down Podcast. And check us out, man. We got a lot of content. Got these guys on there too. JP, we gotta have you on one of our upcoming shows, bro. You gotta get on there.
Let me know.
All right, got you.
Well, how about? Yeah, you guys can find me at Indy_Sooner on there down here below. You see at Indy_Sooner. I do a weekly live stream on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Central Time with my homie and not self-proclaimed, but some proclaim him the king of OU Twitter. I didn't say it. Travis Davison at Trav Skull. At Travis Skull is his at, and you can find the JP and Trav show on YouTube. My channel, the Indy Sooner. Just search JP and Trav show as well, and they'll pop up. Come join us Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Central Time. We use StreamYard as our platform too, so come on and interact with us and join the show.
Yep, ton of fun as always, guys. Thank you so much for being here this evening. But with all that being said, I'll see y'all soon. That's it. See ya.